good. And I think if you do have confusion, I think the first thing to do is kind of outline a little bit about your plot and your story and who the main characters are. If it's you decide right away that is that main character of yours that strong that his or her voice will be able to carry it through 250 pages or so. And are you telling kind of a broader piece that's not going to be as intimate? A lot of times it depends on the kind of books you like to read yourself. Are you drawn to books where the narrator is an individual, or are you drawn into these kind of epics, like whether it's the Harry Potter books or the Lord of the Rings books, which are told from a third-person perspective?
Okay. And how about this one? Again, it's a kind of a fact or fiction kind of deal here, but read more fiction than you write. Would you say that's a true or false statement?
If you're a beginning writer, absolutely, it's true. I think with myself, I try and read as much as I can, but at the moment, while I'm immersed in trying to finish a book, I'm kind of concentrating on my own work right now. But when that's done, I'll be devouring a number of books that I haven't gotten through over the last year or so. So I think yes, if you want to make sure you read, it's a good balance. You have to keep reading as you're writing, but I think most importantly, if you want to be a writer, is you write. So you make that, if you're going to emphasize one thing over the other, is you make sure you write, and you write every day.
Right. Okay. Now, we talked about character development previously, but I guess I want to ask a question now about that here. What would you say about this statement if I were to say, as a writer, you want to avoid telling readers too much about the characters, but instead you show the characters' personalities through their actions and interactions?
Yeah, actually, let me read you just one paragraph here from Natural.
Okay, perfect.
I've got it open here, and actually, I think it might even be one sentence. And this is from the first chapter, about halfway through it. After a troublesome shave in which he drew blood, Roy Hobbs used one thin towel to dry his hands, face, and neck, clean his razor, and wipe up the wet of his toothbrush, so as not to have to ask for another, and this way keep the bill down. Now, that's just one sentence, and that's from Production Relevance, The Natural, and what that shows, the action of Roy Hobbs is doing in that scene kind of foreshadows what's happening below the surface with him, the need to keep the bill down. In the case that he needs the money, of course. The fact that he twice drew blood kind of foreshadows some things happening later in the book, where he kind of tripped himself up with his indiscretions, and and then the towel drying his hands, face, and neck. You could say that potentially that's alluding to his attempt to cover up things that happen later in the book. So that's one sentence, and it's very, very rich with showing the character rather than telling anything about him. But in that sentence, Malwood touches on a number of different themes with that character. So yeah, it's important to make sure you're precise with your words, and you're also trying to imbue something into the development of the character as much as you can when you're writing.
That's an excellent example that you just gave there, Adrian. Good stuff. And yeah, like you said, that was just one sentence. It was like in the the beginning of the book, and kind of show something about the character.
The resonance that it has, just a sentence like that, and also the he's using concrete nouns, and that's another thing I always kind of advise to you use concrete nouns and vowels. So just elevates the type of storytelling. But yeah, one sentence that has such resonance, and you know, there's so many other examples of that too throughout the book. And you know, even from the first verb he uses is Roy Hobbs pod his glass. That's at the very start of the book. And,
can you read that sentence one more time?
Let me see the page.
Okay.
I'll go to page 1 here. Just take 1 second. Roy Hobbs pawed at the glass before thinking to prick a match with his thumbnail and hold the spurting flame in his cupped palm close to the lower berth window. But by then he had figured it was a tunnel they were passing through and was no longer surprised at the bright sight of himself holding a yellow light over his head, peering back in. So he's holding a yellow light over his head. It's almost like a halo effect. He's looking at himself through the window. There's that kind of self-reflection that he has to go through later in the book, and the fact that he pawed at the glass. There's something animalistic about that, and something almost greedy as well, right? With the word pawed, and you know, those are all things that happen. I think people who know the story have seen the movie at least, kind of know what happens with that character, and you know, it's those decisions you make as a writer. They're not by accident, right? That comes from knowing what you're doing.
Okay. And yeah, what about this question I have here, or more of a statement, but all characters are flawed in some way because we're all human. No one's perfect. So we should find something good about your villain and something dark in your protagonist's past in your story.
Well, yeah, I think that would be a good thing to do. I think you know, you want well-rounded characters, and you know, even having a villain who's complex, where the best villains often are those ones that leave the reader somehow empathetic to them and what they do. I think there's some understanding of why they did what they did. I think that takes some real talent to do that. So yes, I think absolutely try and have some complexity with your characters.
And how important is love in a sports novel? We haven't touched on that yet, but having the protagonist have a love struggle or a storyline about love and a plot, in addition to his or her time spent, involved with sports. So how important is love in the story?
It makes the world go around, right?
Or would that be too much? Because having,
No, I think it's absolutely important. I think that's another area where you're talking about holding people's interests and what's you're talking about humanity and what makes us tick, and love, conflict, resolution. Those are all kind of key elements to human storytelling for however long we've been around.
Okay, and we're probably gonna get to your work a little bit because I understand that you've been working on Triumph the Lion. I'll probably get you to read out a couple of passages. But before that, any other things, any other tips about sports fiction writing or sports journalism before we get to your reading?
No, I just kind of emphasize making sure you understand both the craft and the sport, and that you keep it on the most important thing is the character. The things that happen around that character aren't as important, no matter how great the championship is, no matter if they're the Bad News Bears. It's all about the obstacles of getting from one place to the next, and it's almost like the way a story like the Bad News Bears works so well is because they do start so far down on the rung, and they do have so many obstacles to overcome, and that's one thing as you're strategizing your story is to consider is that if you're able to have your characters start at a low point and develop into something greater. It kind of gets your readers rooting for them along the way. So that's something to think about as well.
Okay. You're listening to Smitten by the Written here on CJSF 90.1 FM, and we're speaking with Adrian Brijbassi, editor of Vacay.ca, publication that deals with Canadian destinations and culture. And Adrian is also a writer. He mentioned a bit about 50 Mission Cap, which is a sports novel that he penned several years ago. So Adrian, would you like to share some of your writing with us? I understand that you have a couple of passages from your novel in progress, Triumph the Lion, here this afternoon?
Yeah, well, we've been reading some of Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 and my previous appearances with you, so I guess if on my own blog, and I'm not sure if on the CJSF site you can find the previous editions of this, but I'll kind of continue to pick up where I left off the last time.
Right. Right, and we'll give out your blog information after as well, so yeah, terrific.
Okay, great. So this is, we're picking up here in the middle of Chapter 2, and in this scene, the protagonist, whose name is Blue, he's going to talk about the entering the jungle in South Africa, where he first sees the lion that becomes the kind of title character of the book. And we'll pick it up. Is that so? Maria smiled as if I was suddenly fascinating, a man with an eccentricity. The light from the candle flickered in her pupils, highlighting the curtaining strands of her hair and the black triangle from a play-button decal that covered her bosom. Most of it, anyway. My eyes averted from that play-button, which was making me want to stretch out a hand and push, to the candlelight illuminating Sham's face and dark brown eyes across from me. Sham thinks all creatures on four legs are pretty much the same. I disagree, I told Maria, wrapping the table in punctuation. He's not completely lying about that. Sham nodded and took a sip of his scotch. I treasure the animals we have here in this park, but I don't want to give them too much respect. You can't when you're out there, otherwise you are liable to get scared or superstitious when you need a level head. He sat back in his chair and I winced. He dropped the one hand, vacant of Glenfiddich, off to the side and fixed his glare on my face to let me know, as if I didn't already, that I should brace for the rebuke that was coming. We don't have enough level heads around here, he punctuated. Maria wasn't yet in on the joke surrounding that matter and its subsequent punishment that I endured. She brushed back her hair and lifted her glass to her lips, taking it slow this time and letting it burn down her throat while she listened to Sham, who informed her I was no cook. My service to the kitchen was the same as a detention. For how long, she wanted to know, to which Sham and I both responded with a shrug. Does it have anything to do with that lion, she asked. I tapped my glass and kept my eyes down. Perhaps my fascination with Selrock the lion had become so obvious anyone could pick up on it, even without me saying a word. He's a star, apparently, she said, and set her glass back on the inegre wood with enough unattended oomph to rattle our tumblers and indicate she was getting drunk. Her eyes then refocused on the window, maybe to take in once more the reflection of the three of us, or imagine what might be happening out in the dark, where all we could hear were rustles, squeaks, and cricket whirs. This animal called Selrock is all some of the people on this tour can talk about. Poor Kay, she said. Why? Stupidness, Sham replied. Lady Maria, you will find many amazing things out there. You'll see for yourself when we go. The lion is but one. Tell me about it, she asked. She turned to me and jabbed my elbow with hers. Her skin was warm, her elbow sharp, and her nudge strong enough to knock my arm off its rest. What was it like the first time you saw it, she wanted to know. The lion or the jungle, I asked, still trying to be coy about the subject. The lion, she said, por supuesto. The lion, I said, and sighed, still careful not to get started in front of Sham. I don't know. You'll have to see for yourself. It's different for everyone. I can't promise you'll see any one animal, Sham said to her on cue. Fine, Maria said. Tell me something about Kruger Park, then. What happened to get you kicked off into the kitchen, if it wasn't the lion? This is a national park, Sham finished, not a zoo. While I interjected, nothing eventful, I told Maria, while I looked across at my mudlooly friend and then covered my simper with the lip of my glass. whiffing a scent of the peat, spreading apart my nostrils to catch a hint of the oak, while a ceiling fan buzzed above. "He lies," Sham waggled a finger at me, then swiped it across the brow of his perspiring forehead. "Tell me," Maria tugged my arm. Her touch was playful, with enough sensuality to make me shiver in this part of the world where all you do is sweat. Then I recounted my story to her, with Sham listening carefully, correcting where he felt necessary. Turned out my last time on the plains as part of the Tavishkili Safari Ranger Corps occurred the night after a heavy drinking session with Sham and a couple of the Danes in the kitchen. "Those Danish boys can dop about," Sham interjected. You would know it by the looks of them all, polite and pale, but they can dop, I tell you. Drink like a Medluli man, some of them." The drinking got me depressed. I didn't tell Maria or Sham this. That would have led to an awkward silence, or left me vulnerable to their psychoanalysis. And it was already bad enough Sham thought I was habitually glum and possibly suffering from OCD because of the lion. So, instead, I recounted the morning after that August night, during my 8th month at the Tavishkili, when I was just finding my place weeks after Amir had run me through the overly detailed orientation of the job, despite the fact I knew more about the jungles of Africa than he did about how to buy cheap suits in Camden. The anticipation of seeing the savannah that day was ferocious. During the inebriated hours, when I felt the rush of energy and lack of fear, I had wanted to run into the park alone, rather than wait for a turn with the tourists. My blog, the reason I'd stayed tied to the Tavishkili despite my employer's attempts to coax me to quit, had found recognition. Emails came in from readers, you could say fans, enthralled by Cell Rock, and the photographs of the lion, credited to the Tavishkili Communications Office rather than me, as per Amir's orders. The blog's posts had made it onto email threads and chat rooms about Big 5 safaris. A school group in Vermont visited on a weekly basis and made comments. And there was a television crew from CBS. And there was talk a television crew from CBS might even make a trip to discuss Cell Rock and introduce American viewers to the faces inside the Tavishkili Communications Office, those anonymous conservation activists who had made the lion's notoriety possible. No cameras came, though. There was no 60 Minutes of fame for Cell Rock, no forcing of Amir to pull back his curtain on the Tavishkili Communications Office to reveal one single Indo-Canadian loner behind the WordPress address. At the time, though, I didn't know that. I thought it might happen, and I wanted to make that rumor of media coverage a reality, for Cell Rock's sake, and to shove it in Amir's leathery face, too. Problem is, I had no chance of finding Cell Rock without taking a Land Rover. And even if I weren't chimpanzee drunk that night, I still wouldn't get access to the vehicle. They stayed parked in a garage at night, and Sham and Amir were the only ones with keys to the door. I had wits enough to realize running blind and alone into Greater Kruger Park would probably mean stumbling over tangled brush and falling face first into elephant dung, or splashing stupidly into a crocodile's corner of a watering hole. The chance of locating the lion was far greater if I actually waited for daybreak. When it came, I rode in the tracker seat of Sham's Jeep, the only non-Medluli to ever do so at the Tavishkili. Early on in my Tavishkili career, I told Sham I wanted to track, a statement that inspired him to press a hand to my forehead to check for dengue fever. Each safari ride has a tracker who sits beyond the Land Rover's windshield on a seat welded to the vehicle's hood. A steel footrest keeps your legs from dangling off and being punished by the Jeep's fender, while cushions ease a touch of the discomfort for your back and behind. What every observer notices, though, is the lack of a tether. There's no seatbelt in the tracker seat. If a boom-flying snake were to jump in your lap, you wouldn't want to fidget with a buckle. So in order to keep dexterous in the face of venomous reptiles, you all but ensure decades of severe back pain and arthritis as you clamp your hands to the bottom of the tracker seat or the edge of the hood and use every muscle in your abdomen to keep yourself stationary for 4 hours, rumbling through the unpaved jungle. You stare straight out while grains of sand and tree branches lash back to bruise and sometimes cut your face. You wear a khaki baseball cap to match your khaki uniform and feel your brown knuckles turning to light beige as you squeeze against the steel seat you hope has been welded on good and tight by whoever put the contraption together. When you occupy that position, your job is to spot signs of recent animal activity. Paw or hoof prints, broken branches, clumped grass, the animal's musk, the scent of their blood, hair, sight of tail sliding through the brush, red eyes peering in the dark. While any animal, even the smallest lizard, is a photo op, it is the big five trackers and rangers are paid to find. The leopard, elephant, rhino, Cape buffalo, and lion. No many $1,000 vacation for retirees and middle-class homeowners flush with cash is considered value earned without a moment spent in the presence of each of those five species. Better yet, spot a lion snatching the neck of an impala, or a leopard tearing into a zebra, or an elephant family bonding in a copse, and you will have won long, effusive words of gratitude from your passengers, and maybe more than a $5 tip. And if you're sham, perhaps a kiss and a key card covertly inserted into your back pocket. No such reward was coming my way on that morning of my Tabashkili transgression, however. We hit the plains, and what I remember first about that morning safari was the smell. Death under a baobab tree, gripped in the teeth of a lioness, blood of a boar plopping onto the foliage below, monkey dung in so many treeful stretches of the park, humidity dripping with salt and sweat, respites of fragrance from wild date palms and acacia trees. I encountered them all from the unstable perch of my tracker seat, as we thundered through the Sabi Sands Reserve at a speed that I knew sham reached simply to aggravate me. The Land Rover jostled as it splashed over muddy potholes and hammered over one rocky field after another, making me almost nauseous up front. It was late spring below the equator, and the park was lush with foliage, rich with the kind of action first rollers paid good money to see. A leopard had killed an impala. A quintet of lion cubs rolled around on the banks of the gushing Sabi River while their mothers kept careful watch. An eagle surveyed from above. A herd of giraffes stomped in front of our vehicle in such majestic form every one of us gazed up with jaws open and necks tilted all the way back until the last loping stride, which took away the spotted skin and perked ears and left only the clouds and azure sky to fill our eyes. I stared at the canopy for the moment after the giraffes fled and forgot about the pain in my back and the soreness in my biceps. Sham put an end to that distraction, though, when he picked up on the distinct, far-off rumble of a stampede. He reversed the Land Rover, forcing me to double over, and then quickly swung the Jeep around, jerking his passengers out of any fixation they may have had with the heavens and getting them focused again on the appeal of the earth. The vehicle sped us toward the galloping canoes and the eventful minutes that would lead to my sequestration in the kitchen. And I'll stop there.
That's terrific stuff, Adrian. So it's always interested to know what happens next in the story. So, Adrian, you mentioned earlier with this particular novel that you're working on, Triumph the Lion. Obviously, we've had you on here on this show, Smitten by Written, several times to kind of read out a few excerpts here and there. So, obviously, all of the excerpts that we've done on the show are on your website, and that would be adrianbrijbassi.com. That's AdrianBrijbassi.com. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Perfect. And so obviously we look forward to finding out what happens, what develops in the story. And it's always a pleasure to have you read that out for us. Now, just one thing though, is this story completed, or are you still putting the finishing touches on it?
Oh, I think I'm in pretty good shape right now.
Okay.
Give it a couple of weeks and then go through it, run through it once more time, and then I think I might be in good shape.
Awesome. That's good to hear. All right. We're almost going to wrap up this show, but before we go, any more tips or suggestions for our listeners before we wrap up?
Oh, just keep writing. I think that's the most important thing. Keep at it. Don't get most of all, don't get discouraged. Continue to improve and have fun. Absolutely, you have to have fun doing this.
Good stuff. And obviously, as well, Adrian, enjoy watching the hockey playoffs as well as the baseball season. We'll have you back.
I'm one person outside of BC and Canada who is cheering for the Canucks. So.
Oh yeah, we never talked about that Twitter thing with the Los Angeles Kings.
Right.
Yeah, and I would call myself one person in BC who doesn't sure for the Canucks, but I digress.
Right.
All right. Good stuff, Adrian. So that's Adrian Brijbassi, editor of Vacay.ca, a publication that deals with Canadian destinations and culture, and he's also a writer. Thanks again, Adrian, for joining us on today's program.
Thanks, KP. You be well.
Okay, perfect. And we'll take a break and we'll be back after these messages.
National Youth Arts Week, May 1st to 7th, is an annual celebration of youth and